At an airport in Los Angeles, flight attendants Jenny and Paula prepare for their next trip. Captain Forrest and co-pilot Wilsey chat with them, noting that there won't be many passengers tonight because of the thunderstorms. Wilsey takes some medicine since he's not feeling well. Soon, the attendants meet the passengers for the flight. George is a teenager who often flies alone and dislikes being fussed over. Bev is traveling with her husband, Dr. Kingston, who has Parkinson's and can't move or speak. Army medic Shyla seems nervous about flying, while Louise relaxes with her cat. Niall and Susan, who are expecting a baby, are germaphobes and wipe down their seats before sitting. Vorst and Nika are excited foreigners with limited English. Henry has brought a cage of hamsters, but when Ralph tries to help him store it, he gets bitten. Since the cage doesn't fit in the overhead bin, Henry has to send it to the cargo hold. Meanwhile, Preston, a businessman, keeps sneezing and appears to have the same illness as Wilsey. When the plane takes off, Jenny has to remind Niall to hang up his phone. When he refuses, Henry steps in, escalating into an argument. Jenny calms them down by warning that they could be arrested upon landing. Henry then flirts with Jenny, mentioning his PhD and making a snarky comment about society's poor manners. Later, Henry watches the news and sees a report about the CDC surrounding an apartment building in Los Angeles. Ralph starts feeling unwell and asks for water while staring at the bite wound on his thumb. Jenny notices his strange posture and checks on him, but Ralph suddenly vomits all over her. His mouth foams as he screams to get off the plane. The attendants do their best to care for him, but nobody notices Louise's cat sneaking around and eating some of the vomit. Jenny leaves Ralph with Paula to clean herself up, but Ralph bolts down the corridor, shoving her to the ground. He starts banging on the cockpit door, demanding the plane stop. Following protocol, Wilsey locks the door and Forrest alerts ground control. Henry tries to intervene but is overpowered. George also tries and fails. Finally, Preston, George, Paula, Shyla, and Henry team up to subdue Ralph and knock him out. They tie his wrists with plastic restraints. Shyla checks on everyone to make sure no one is injured, while Jenny has a moment of self-doubt, confiding in Paula that she feels useless during emergencies. Forrest then announces they've been ordered to make an emergency landing and instructs everyone to return to their seats. The plane shakes violently as it descends, and the attendants teach the passengers how to brace for landing. Ralph's body slides around, bumping into things, so Jenny and Paula work together to secure him in a seat. While Paula struggles with her seatbelt, Ralph suddenly wakes up with red eyes and bites her on the nose, severely injuring her. He goes wild again, and the passengers have to team up once more to push him into the bathroom and lock him inside. As the plane finally lands, Shyla uses the emergency first aid kit to give Paula medicine to prevent her from going into shock and ties a scarf around her face, but Paula is losing a lot of blood and needs immediate medical attention. Forrest grows frustrated when ground control tells them to wait, despite knowing about the emergency. Ignoring the rules, he decides to land at an unassigned gate. Fortunately, baggage handler Ed spots the plane arriving and opens the gate just in time. Forrest and Wilsey hold the bathroom door shut while the rest of the passengers rush off the plane, except for Bev and Kingston, who need help to move. Ed guides the group to the other end of the gate, but the door is locked and no one responds to his radio calls. Left with no other choice, he leads them through an employee entrance into the airport staging area. They take the stairs, but when Ed reaches the doors, he's shocked to find them all locked, which he says never happens. Checking the power box, he confirms the airport is under lockdown. Everything they do is being monitored by the active security cameras. The group starts arguing about what to do, but they're interrupted by the sound of sirens. Looking through a window, they see ambulances and police cars outside, only for the window to suddenly be covered. A voice announces that the group is under quarantine and must wait for help. The passengers call their families to let them know what's happening, but soon their fear turns into anger. They yell at Jenny, blaming her as the face of the airline. Jenny doesn't know how to respond, but Shyla steps in and mentions she has a medical kit in her luggage that might help Paula survive a few more hours. Jenny takes Ed and a few passengers to retrieve Shyla's bag, but as they move, the power goes out. Ed leads the way with his flashlight, guiding them back to the plane. When they return, they're horrified to find that Wilsey and Forrest are gone. Jenny opens the bathroom and finds it covered in blood. Meanwhile, Preston goes to retrieve his laptop and accidentally bumps into Kingston, who is now sitting alone. Bev is missing, and when the group questions what happened, Kingston uses his eyes to point at a pair of chewed-through plastic cuffs on the floor. In the meantime, Ed cuts the carpet to access a hatch leading to the baggage hold. Jenny grabs Shyla's medical kit, while Niall retrieves a gun from his suitcase. As Ed searches, he panics when something brushes against his foot, startling him. He claims it was a rat, but Henry insists it was one of his hamsters after finding the broken cage. As Jenny climbs out of the hold, she spots Preston's laptop, now smeared with blood. At the end of the corridor, Wilsey is crawling on all fours doors, growling and covered in blood. Suddenly, an infected Forrest appears behind Jenny and attacks her. The guys quickly rush to help, but their punches have no effect. Niall ends up shooting Forrest to death, but some of his blood lands on Niall's face. Shaken, the group runs off the plane and into the gate corridor, where they find Kingston thrown from his wheelchair and Preston lying unconscious with a bite on the back of his neck. Nearby, Jenny finds Bev crying and begging for help, but she suddenly transforms and lunges at her. Jenny barely manages to outrun her, and the guys slam the door to lock Bev out. The group regroups with the others, and Shyla does her best to care for Paula. Susan cleans the blood off Neil's face, and the two share a kiss despite the chaos. Henry and Ed move furniture to barricade the door and keep Bev from getting in. As Jenny looks around, she spots drops of blood on the floor, making her worry about where they came from. Finally snapping, Jenny tells everyone to quiet down and declares herself the leader since the captain is dead. Shyla explains that this doesn't seem like any disease she's familiar with, and Jenny remembers the quarantined building she saw on the news earlier. Meanwhile, Kingston notices a rat with glowing red eyes nearby. He tries to hum for attention, but nobody hears him. The rat falls onto Kingston's head and bites him before George knocks it off. The group traps the rat in a bucket while Shyla treats Kingston's wound. The group decides to lock George and Paula in a crate as a precaution in case they transform too. While handling the rat with a glove, Ed notices a tag on its leg, meaning it escaped from a lab. George insists he saw long tails in the cage earlier and accuses Henry of lying about bringing hamsters. Henry denies it, arguing that lab rats wouldn't have passed security. Jenny pulls Henry aside to demand the truth, and Henry swears he's innocent. He hugs Jenny for comfort, but suddenly Ralph appears out of nowhere and attacks her. Henry tries to fight him off, but Ralph ignores him. Hearing the commotion, the others rush to help, using a hose to strangle Ralph until they subdue him. At that moment, Ed gets a message on the radio saying the CDC has arrived. The group gathers at the door, hopeful for rescue, but instead, 4 armed officers enter and hold them at gunpoint. The officers confiscate the rat and Neil's gun, then move to Paula and Kingston, injecting them with something. When the group demands answers, the officers only reply that it's protocol. The officers insist the others must also take the injections. Louise volunteers to go first, but before she can be injected, her cat suddenly bites her neck and runs off. An officer opens fire at the cat but misses every shot. Meanwhile, Kingston finally transforms and attacks one of the officers, biting him. The other officers quickly shoot Kingston down and try to carry their injured partner out, only to find the door locked. They shoot at the door until it breaks open and run outside, with Vorst using the chance to follow them. As soon as the police see them, they open fire, killing everyone except one agent who only gets shot in the leg. The group drags the injured agent back inside and locks the door. At that moment, they hear the infected people roaring and getting closer, so they rush to hide inside a container. Susan hesitates when she notices Neil foaming at the mouth, but the others drag her inside, explaining that he's already infected too. Once the container is shut, Shyla points out that each injection they received had a different color, so it seems like everyone was given something unique, not just a standard protocol. Henry then reveals he found a gun and forces the injured officer to confess the truth. The officer admits he's not with the CDC. He works for the CBDT, the Chemical Biological Domestic Terrorism Unit under Homeland Security. He explains that earlier, a team went to the quarantine department in Los Angeles, but no one came out alive. In the attic, they discovered a bioterror lab set up by a cult trying to create a cure using a survivor's blood. However, their attempts made things worse, and the infected rats were part of the experiment. This group on the plane was meant to be the next human test subjects. After revealing the rats spread the disease, the officer grabs the gun from Henry and takes his own life. Nika breaks down after hearing the truth, but Ed remembers that this terminal sometimes floods because of an old drainage tunnel. He thinks they might be able to escape if they can find it. Suddenly, Wilsey appears above the container, grabbing Ed's hand. Henry tries to shoot him but realizes the gun is out of bullets. Ed tells George to hit a button that raises the container, crushing Wilsey against a beam. Afterward, the group leaves the container, following Ed as he guides them through the terminal. Jenny notices Henry is missing, and Nika, who's walking at the back, is suddenly dragged away by something. Panicked, the group rushes up a set of stairs to escape. Meanwhile, Henry secretly accesses a bag containing another gun. As the group keeps running, Jenny trips and comes face to face with Paula, who is now fully transformed. Heartbroken, Jenny accepts her friend is gone and fights her off with a wrench. After a brutal struggle, she manages to push Paula off the platform, killing her. The group eventually makes it to an office where they search for blueprints of the terminal. The maps show a way through a wall that will lead them to the drainage tunnel. While While they look, George reveals he stole Henry's bag. Inside, he finds suspicious documents about lab experiments and a mysterious box. At that moment, Susan and Niall show up, fully infected, and try to attack. Henry reappears just in time and shoots them both, saving the group. Ed notices Henry's hand and realizes he's been bitten. Meanwhile, George opens the mysterious box to find a collection of medicine and a syringe. Finally, Henry admits he brought the infected rats on board and confesses that he's part of the cult mentioned by the officer. The cult's goal is to cleanse the planet of humans, who they believe are becoming increasingly violent and destructive. Henry threatens to kill Jenny unless George gives him the antidote, so Ed steps in and jumps on Henry to stop him, but gets shot and killed. Scared, the group lets Henry take the antidote, which he mixes with blood from his wound before injecting it into his eye. While doing this, he explains that his group has followers in many organizations, which is how he managed to get the infected rats through security. Now ready to leave, Henry grabs George to use him as a hostage. Jenny tries to intervene, but Henry knocks her down and escapes with George and the blueprints. Jenny is left dizzy, so Shyla heads out to follow Henry first. A few minutes later, Jenny regains her balance and goes after them but is found by an infected Preston. A chase follows, and Preston almost grabs her before she kicks him away. Jenny then lures him toward a machine and kills him by bashing his head repeatedly with a hatch lid. Afterward, she continues searching for George but has to take a different route when she spots a transformed Nika nearby. While moving through another room, Jenny bumps into Shyla, who now has the officer's thermal goggles. Shyla hands the goggles to Jenny and reveals that she's been bitten. Knowing her time is limited, Shyla tells Jenny to focus on finding George while she stays behind to buy time. Shyla returns to the main area, loudly drawing the attention of the remaining infected, who swarm her immediately. Jenny follows a blood trail and finds a hole in the wall that Henry used to access the drainage tunnel. Before she can enter, she's grabbed by an infected Louise. Jenny fights her off with the wrench, knocking her down. Moving through a narrow section between walls, Jenny spots more blood on the ground using the goggles. She's startled by the sight of mice, but quickly realizes they're not lab rats. Following the trail, she eventually finds the blueprints and Henry's shirt near a ladder leading to the drainage tunnel. Looking down, she sees George, who warns her that the antidote didn't work and Henry has already transformed. Ignoring his warnings, Jenny descends into the tunnel. As she moves, blood drips onto her goggles. Suddenly, Henry attacks her, making her drop the goggles while he throws her around. Jenny struggles to hold him off while George, now wearing the goggles, grabs the gun and shoots Henry, bringing him down. Jenny retrieves the goggles and uses the wrench to deliver the final blow to Henry's head, ensuring he's dead. Just then, flames erupt from the hatch as the teams outside begin burning down the terminal. Finding the main exit blocked, Jenny discovers a baggage tunnel and kicks open the lid. George is scared to go down, but agrees after Jenny gives him the goggles, letting him go first for safety. Explosions from the fire grow louder, so they hurry through the tunnel. However, Jenny starts to weaken, realizing she's infected. George notices her vomiting but refuses to leave her behind. For his sake, Jenny agrees to keep moving. Eventually, they reach the exit, only to find it blocked by metal bars. George manages to slip through, but when he looks back, he sees that Jenny has fully transformed. She tries to attack him through the bars, but is too large to get through. George frees himself by taking off his jacket, leaving Jenny trapped. Finally, George escapes the airport and finds freedom. Meanwhile, Louise's cat also escapes and begins making its way into the city. Don't forget to subscribe. Here's some more interesting story you don't want to miss.